So in this book, in the police section, we're going to learn how to scoop somebody's eye out of their head. Hi, I'm Joe, and welcome to Fighting Words, where I do martial arts book reviews, and I talk about other martial arts related subjects. And this week, we're going to do American Combat Judo by Bernard Cosneck, written in 1944. Now, Cosneck himself was a two-time Big Ten wrestling champion. He studied several unarmed combat systems, and actually he assisted Jack Dempsey in his book when Dempsey was teaching hand-to-hand combat to the Coast Guard. He says that this American Combat Judo is based off of jujitsu, wrestling, foot fighting, Savate, as well as boxing. There's definitely wrestling influence here. The others, I'll get to that at the end. Now, he starts off with suggestions to the reader, and he numbers them. And this covers a lot of principles, including things like, chop the throat and knee the groin whenever possible. And, the key to landing from a fall is to relax. So a number of principles to keep in mind. This is clearly designed as a syllabus that people can study, and he wants you to study this stuff with these ideas in mind from the get-go. The first real technique chapter we get into is one called Disabling Blows, which focuses on the hack and the jab. The hack is a chop. This was a common technique drawn from jujitsu around this period of time. He actually says, recommends that you should toughen up the striking surface by hitting it against a table. What's interesting to note, in order to contrast this with some other combatives and martial arts styles, the Fairbairn combatives by WWII Fairbairn opted to have the thumb out when you're doing your chops, whereas most traditional martial arts like karate and taekwondo want the thumb pressed and tucked in. He says do it either way. He doesn't seem to really have much of an opinion. Now the jab is with the middle knuckle extended. And he goes over places to jab, and he makes a list, and he includes pictures of, use this strike for the throat, and, use this strike at this point. He also includes other striking methods in this, including stomps, kicks, a thumb jab, where you're literally just ramming your thumb into a soft spot, and also punches. For instance, he talks about attacking the solar plexus with a twisting sort of punch. From that, he moves on to another chapter on holds and locks. Now, this is sort of a grab bag. It does include, like your standard rear naked choke. He calls it the unbreakable strangle. It includes a twisting wrist lock, but it also includes things like how to escape from being grabbed from behind, which, my impression initially upon reading the title was that it was holds and locks that we use. Apparently, it's also escaping holds and locks that the other guy does. He also gets into his next chapter on breaks and releases. So this is from a variety of holds. This is very focused on breaking out of holds. And that includes, unusually, I think, a body scissors from the front, what we today might refer to as the guard, as well as the back. And that part's interesting to me because his recommendation is like jam your elbow into the guy's inner thigh if he's got you in a body scissors from the front. The thing is, anyone who's done Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu for more than a few months will have a brand new beginner try that, or maybe they've tried it on their own. it's something you can just sort of grit your teeth and like ignore. Against a rear body scissors, he shows an old catch technique called an over scissors, although I don't think he uses that term. And then he also goes over how to get out of, front bear hug, front and rear strangles, and then there's the dreaded handshake and how to deal with that. And it's basically by, crushing the guy's thumb. It's weird how much defense against handshakes comes up in these older, self-defense books. After that, he's got a chapter on throws and trips. And in this section, he has a lot, again, because of his wrestling background, of getting behind a guy and tripping him or dumping him. He even has a technique that he refers to as a pile driver. It's not what you'd see if, what you know as a pile driver from professional wrestling. But he's talking about getting behind a guy, scooping him up, turning him upside down, and dropping him head first on the ground. He says, yeah, this is pretty much designed to, break the guy's neck. Whoa. We've just gone from, how to defend against a handshake to now we're assassinating people. It's not the last time. Also in this section is a lot of forward throws, like the kind you'd expect to find in judo or jujitsu, including shoulder throw, a lapel throw where he just straight up grabs the front of the guy's jacket and tosses him face first to the ground. And then there's a hip throw, but he ends it by dropping the guy on his knee, which is not the way I'm used to seeing that finished. And then there's actually also some, more, I think that there's a choke here. There's also a wrist lock against somebody, pushing against you. When you, push your chest back against their hand and then grab their elbow and, flex it in and that sort of motion. So this is once again demonstrating that despite the name of the chapter, we're getting a lot of things that aren't covered by whatever the title is, right? And then comes the most fun section on police tactics, and the first thing is, defending against two people. You kick one and you chop the other in the throat. But the very second thing on there is how to assassinate someone, how to garrote them from behind, like Hitman style, like loop the rope around their neck, then turn over and lift them up on your shoulders. He does at least mention that this is a commando tactic. So why are you including it in police tactics? That's rough, man. This also includes a bit on how to scoop out somebody's eyeball. But in the midst of all this, he's also including things that you might expect from police tactics. There's like wrist lock style come-alongs, how to, lift someone out of a chair if they're resisting, using pain points under the jaw, how to get someone through a door if they're resisting you there. And this is also the section where he gets into weapons defense from guns, clubs, and knives. And as always, when it comes to weapons defense, your mileage may vary. I'm not all that a fan of, what I see with his with his firearms defense against a pistol, but I guess it's better than nothing. And anyway, he does finish up with a section on, just sort of enumerating, like, okay, if you're in this situation, if somebody's attacking you from the front, here are your options. If somebody's attacking you from the rear, here are your options. And if you get behind somebody here, so that makes for a nice reference. There's a couple things I noticed. One is that there's a lot of very wrestling-centric stuff going on. I mean, at one point he even includes like a toe hold from catch wrestling. He includes an arm drag and a go behind, which I don't know if I've ever seen a self-defense book or even a combatives book on something like that. There are no foot sweeps or reaps, the sort of that you would typically find in judo or jiu-jitsu manuals. Again, very wrestling centric. Another unusual thing is, I almost wonder if this was a common attack in the 40s, where you grab a guy's belt and put your forearm across his throat and drive him down across your knee so he's face up. Because he shows that move in the beginning of the book, and the next chapter or so shows how to defend against it. I don't know. I'm just very curious about that, and when I can get a training partner, I'd like to try it to see how effective, how helpless it truly makes you. So as far as the pros go, historically I love it because it was written near the end of World War II. It was written by a man who apparently was involved in teaching combatives to some U.S. military personnel, those in the Coast Guard. And I think historically that part is interesting to me, to sort of compare this to other combative or defense manuals that were around at that time. If you're going to use it nowadays, a lot of the defenses are very simple. Say a little too simplistic, but since we're on the pros, let's focus on the pros, and that is everything's basic, especially if you have a bit of wrestling. You're going to be very familiar with some of this stuff. As far as the cons go, from a reader's perspective, it is pretty disorganized. Pretty disorganized, about 30% disorganized, I guess. Because you do get bits and pieces of things that aren't the thing that the title told you the chapter was going to be about, right? And if it was up to me, I would have rearranged some of those. And why, for the love of God, in the police section, are you showing how to choke someone to death and scoop their eyeball out? That surely we could find another name for that section, another way to classify those techniques. And again, as I mentioned, sometimes it'll be a chapter on, holds and throws, and also, by the way, here's a wrist lock in the middle of nowhere. And then you got the scale of force jumps around a lot. Everything from, grinding your thumb underneath somebody's jawline right here, hitting a pressure point in order to make them stand up and get out of a chair so that you can lead them somewhere else. That's like just the beginning level of physical force. And then, hate to keep harping on it, but scooping out somebody's eyeball is like maiming. That's like lethal force, right? So it does jump around a lot on that, and it wouldn't be so troublesome except that, it is disorganized, and there's no way to tell, like, as a member of law enforcement, am I supposed to come up and drape a rope around somebody and then haul them across my back and choke them to death? Or am I supposed to just, like, turn their head slightly so that they can't resist me pushing them through a door? So, I don't know. Overall, it's a fun book. So who would I recommend this to? If you can find it, and I think it is available for free on PDF, it does have some useful self-defense ideas, some useful pain-inducing ideas for like less than lethal settings. And again, if you are a fan of, historical combat and like the combatives that were going on around this time, I think it's a pretty good book for that. So, I don't know. It was a fun read. It's an historical read. Definitely avoid some of the things in it. Shows resuscitation. How do you resuscitate somebody? Pick him up and knee him in the back. That's what it says. Don't do that. Don't do that. So, yeah, like I said, fun book, if a bit confusing at times. But I'm glad I read it, and now you know about it. So that's all I got for this week, and I'll see you next week. Thank you.